Hey YouTube, wanted to throw out a quick, well, it's not going to be quick, it's actually going to be a long rig review for you today. It is a new to the market scaler, and it's just come out within the last month. It's made by ECX, it's called the Barrage, and it is designed to be an entry-level rig. It is priced as such. At the time of this video, you can purchase this rig for $179 online or at your local hobby store. It is designed, like I said, to be an entry-level rig. However, that's kind of where it starts and stops. In my opinion, at $179, you get a ton for your money, and I will go through it. I really like what ECX is doing. If you've watched some of my other videos, they put out the temper, and they kind of tried to do the same thing with that, is get a lot of people into the hobby at a low price point. This is their version, or their offering of a scale, and I think they've done a great job. I think they've succeeded at what they've tried to do. If you're looking at the body, it's a little bit different than what you see out of the box. I've done some modifications to it, but I'll talk about those in a little bit. I want to get into the chassis first and kind of go over everything that we've got. Again, it's a scaler. They marketed it as a 1/12 scaler, and I think that's based primarily on the width of the axles. The axles are narrow underneath, and they borrow those from the temper. I will get into that in a little bit as well. But from the comparison to some of the other rigs that I have in my garage, I think it's more closer to a 1/10 scale rig, and probably closer to a CC01 in terms of size, a Tamiya CC01, a little bit smaller than an Axial SCX10, and I'll compare those a little bit later. As you can see, it's a ladder type frame. It's a metal ladder type frame, and it does not come with the Nerf bars. I put those on myself, but I will get into that a little bit later as well. It comes with licensed Falcon Wild Peak AT tires, and in my opinion, they're a good all-around tire. The only issues that I've had with them have been on wet mud. They don't really do well in the wet mud, at least the conditions I've run them on, and they've been some fairly steep conditions. So I'm going to keep running the rig, and I'll update you guys on the tires, but I love the look of them. They're very scale. They are mounted to a plastic wheel. They're not beadlock. The tires are actually glued on to the wheels, which is typical of a lot of manufacturers out there, including Axial, Viterra. So don't let that be a hang-up point for you guys. That's something that's typical in the industry. Like I said, comes with big bumpers, front and rear. The bumpers do come with LEDs mounted in them. These are in the rear, and they are red, and then we've got two in the front, which are white to simulate lights. The winch does not come with the vehicle, neither do the shackles. I put those on separately as well, and I'll get into that a little bit. Some of the things, I'll get into some great detail a little bit later, but some of the things that are borrowed from the ECX temper are the motor and the transmission. And that's not a bad thing, to be honest with you. A lot of torque. This small little motor, you would think that it's not going to give you the torque or the speed that you need. You'd be wrong. If you watch my video, this rig is surprisingly fast, and it's got a ton of torque, and so more than enough to do what you need to do. I mean, if you're a competition crawler, this is not probably a rig you're going to be looking at. If you're out to have some fun and crawl and try and keep up with your buddy with an SCX10, you're not going to have any problems with this. You're not going to be wishing you had more power. You'll be able to do anything that your buddy with an SCX10 would be able to do. Some of the things that are different about this are the shocks are mounted on the inside of the chassis, and the reason they've done that, again, they share the axles with the ECX temper. And in order to get the stance that they have, which are the track, they had to push it out with wheel wideners. And if you watch some of my other videos on the ECX temper, I hope you can see that right there. They come with, I estimate them to be around 11, 12 millimeters. On my temper, I put 19 millimeter wheel wideners on there, and it just pushes the wheels out on both sides. And what happens when you do that is you put a little bit more stress on your C-hubs, and what ECX has done is they've actually put in an aluminum C-hub for you in the front, and they've put lockouts in the rear. So that's going to give you some more strength both front and rear, so don't let the wheel wideners really turn you off either. I mean, they've really done some things to strengthen the axles and those components so that wear and tear is kind of minimized. And again, it's going to depend on your driving style. But in my opinion, I think they've done some great stuff there to try and minimize any wear and tear unnecessarily. You've got metal links going to all four corners. You've got big bore drive shafts, which differs from the temper. You have smaller drive shafts on the temper. The out drives coming out of the transmission are also, these are all metal. So that's a great thing. Again, I mentioned the LEDs. It also has a battery forward setup, which puts all your weight over the front axle, and that's kind of commonplace nowadays with crawler rigs, and so ECX is right on par with where they need to be as far as that's concerned. You have a separate ESC, which has a crawler mode into it, or on it I should say, and the way that works is it's similar to a bind plug in your receiver. You just move these plugs back and forth and you can go from normal or the crawler mode. So that I haven't really tweaked with it all that much, but it's there, it's an option, and I think it's pretty cool. I should mention all the electronics are waterproof, and that's another bonus that you get with this rig. There's a lot of rigs out there that do not come with waterproof electronics. The receiver is a 4-channel, and there are 3 of the channels are used right out of the gate. One for your ESC obviously, and then the other for your servo and your steering. The 3rd channel is being used for your lights, but you have a 4th channel that's open, and that could be used for additional lighting if you'd like, or the winch, which is what I have up front. So the fact that you've got a 4-channel receiver, you've got waterproof electronics, and all that you do with this rig, LED lights, the whole bit. I mean, like I said, you get a lot for your money. $179. I'll keep saying that, $179. Some of you are going to balk at the way this thing is set up with the wheel wideners and the shocks mounted on the inside. Well, most rigs don't have. I'm telling you, as odd as it sounds, it works. I was a little skeptical, I gotta admit, but I got it out on the trail and I started doing some climbing with it, and it just works. The other thing I should mention is they put bump stops on the shocks, and let's see if I can get you a good shot of that. So the bump stops are just plastic, and they're right on the shaft, and there's some reasons I think they did that, and I'll tell you what they are. First and foremost, up front, they put bump stops on there to just limit the down travel so that your servo doesn't hit the battery tray. The other thing is they borrow these shocks directly from the temper, and with the same motor and the same transmission, I would imagine you'd probably have a lot of torque steer. And what I think they've done with the bump stops is to try and get rid of a lot of that. So you have torque steer and torque twist both all over the temper, and I did some things to alleviate that. I think the bump stops on the shocks were kind of done in an effort to make that happen. If you look at the down travel on the front of the rig, it doesn't look like there's much there, and that was a bit of concern when I was first looking at this rig. That's the front, and this is the rear, the down travel. The rear is a little bit better than the front, but it's still limited. But when you get it out on the trail, and if you look right here, that is the rear tires on the ground. I mean, you've got a good 2.5 inches of articulation and flex in this rig. And there's the rear. The rear is greater than the front, and I mean, you're looking at almost 3 inches there. So again, if you're looking at this rig and you say, oh, there's some kind of crazy things in terms of the way they've got it set up, don't let it deter you. I'm telling you, it may look a little bit odd, but it works. It really works. So I think, like I said at the beginning of this video, ECX has accomplished what they've set out to do. They want to put a capable rig at a entry-level price point, and I think they've just succeeded phenomenally. One of the things I didn't really care for, and you can kind of see on the picture on this body, is the body is really large and it comes down below, and there's almost like some running rails. I didn't like that, so what I did on the body is I chopped all that off, and I made the fenders really look like fenders, and I chopped off all the skirts down below. Originally I had some electrical duct tape here, but I had some diamond plate laying around, and I decided to put that on instead. So that's another mod I've done. I've put some different decals on the front, and these are all from old builds, and these are simple, easy things you can do that don't cost you any money. I've got windshield wipers on the front, and I got some hood scoops. I redid the grill as well. I wasn't really keen on the grill that was on the front. It just didn't look scale to me. So this is from a Traxxas car that I had laying around. Some decals I had laying around. I did that. Put some decals on the front. On the side, I went and did a door handle, gas filler cap. I painted the bed black. I did, originally this was electrical tape as well, and I decided to go ahead and just do diamond plate on the back as well, because I had some of that laying around. So these are all cheap mods that you can do to the body to kind of make it look a little bit more scale, maybe a little bit your own. You know, you can toy around with painting the fenders black. There's all sorts of things you can do. I moved a few decals around that were already on the rig too. So that's the cool thing about this is, you know, you make the rig your own, do what you want to do. Getting into the chassis, some of the mods I've done to the chassis is I have put on these Nerf bars on the side, and these are actually from an SCX 10 build. And you do have to do some modifications. You got to drill through the chassis rail to mount these, but it's real easy. And then these were originally silver. I painted them black to match. The other thing I did on the front, and I showed you a little bit earlier, is I put a winch on the front, and this takes a little bit of time to mount as well. You have to disconnect the mounting plate for the winch, mount that onto the bumper, and then mount the winch after. It's real easy to do. This is a winch that I had laying around, and you can buy them for about $30–35. Shackles I put on the front, they already had the mounts. Those are about $4 or $5. So there's a lot of things you can do to this to kind of dress it up a little bit and make it look a little bit more scale, and they're all cheap mods. Again, this rig retails for $179. So I mean, you got a lot of room to play before you can even get up to the deadbolt that I mentioned earlier at $300. All the mods that I've done to this are under $25 with the exception of the winch, and like I said, I just had that laying around for another build. One of the other things I want to mention is, because of these axles and how small they are, the pumpkin is so small, you've got a lot of ground clearance down below, and that's another key issue when you're comparing it to other rigs, is you do have the ground clearance, you do have the articulation. And now that I've got this up here, I also want to talk about the servo. The servo is a standard size servo in terms of width, but in terms of depth, going the other way, it is a little bit shorter or smaller than a typical standard size servo. And they did that to try and fit it into this package so that it didn't run into the shocks on the back. And that was kind of the issue, is if the servo was standard size in terms of depth, it was going to hit your shocks. So they shortened it up a little bit. I'm going to see how that plays out. For what I've read, all the gears are metal, and we'll see how, like I said, we'll see how that plays out over time. I'll keep you guys updated and do some update videos. But that's the rig in a nutshell right there. Like I said at the beginning of the video, extremely pleased with what ECX has done. I think they're trying to engage and get everybody into this hobby as best they can, and this rig will not disappoint. It is, in my opinion, once you do a few things to it, it is a good scale looking rig, and it's very, very capable, and it'll keep you right up with an SCX 10. So I hope you like what you see. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. I'll give you updates on this rig throughout. I plan on doing some more run videos. I'm also going to post a comparison between this rig and a Tamiya CC01 and an Axial SCX10. So look for that. I think I'm also going to try and compare it to the ECX Temper as well. But if you're wanting to get into this hobby and you're wanting to get into the scale scene and you don't have a ton of money, this is, in my opinion, your best bet right now. Best rig on the market at this price point, bar none. So like I said, I hope you like what you see. Have fun out there. Enjoy the RC hobby, and I'll catch you later.